Do I need to stand anywhere particular?
Wherever you want.
Okay. All right, thanks everybody for being here, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Benjamin Marazzi, who is going to present to us today. His faculty sponsor is Dr. Manabusaiki, and he's going to talk to us about the reasoning behind the political divides in America. And so we're glad to see you this morning. Appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you.
And Benjamin, mask is optional for the talking part, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you and good morning. My name, like she said, is Benjamin Marazzi, and I'll today be talking to you about the two different political theories behind the divide in America. The current American political environment is dominated by two political theories that provide reasoning behind the widening divide between political parties. The polarization theory, supported by Alan Abramowitz, suggests that the American public has become increasingly polarized or divided over the years due to racial and sexual issues in the social world, which has led to a two-party system that is largely divided along these lines. The party sorting theory, supported by Morris Fiorina, argues that it is not the public that has polarized over time, but the political parties themselves, forcing most Americans to choose between one extreme or the other. The party sorting theory suggests that liberal Republicans have changed allegiance to the Democratic Party and conservative Democrats have changed allegiance to the Republican Party, while the American public has stayed relatively moderate. Abramowitz argues that party polarization was evident beginning in the 60s, with the Democratic Party focusing on civil rights and racial equality, while the Republican Party increasingly felt there should be no special rights for minorities. By the 1980s, homosexuality and abortion rights dominated the Democratic Party, forcing the moral majority to lobby for conservative values within the Republican Party. This polarization reached its widest divide under the Obama administration, with most voters perceiving a deep gap in understanding of the opposing party. This rapid decay can also be seen in an Ames study in the progressively negative view of one's political opposition, with 37% negative rating during the Carter era versus a 70% negative rating in the Obama era. Abramowitz argues that the rise of Donald Trump to the presidency can be traced back to white racial resentment and continued polarization over time. He brought attention to many issues plaguing the country by playing up the racial tension lying underneath. Exit polls suggested that racial resentment and fear among Republicans were keys to Trump's success. Separation and border walls continue to drive a wedge between the Democrats and Republicans by an enormous rate. For years, Republican officials have tried to convert white Democrats to their side by emphasizing the negatives of non-white America that spark fear into white America. These results are seen in the South moving from traditionally Democratic states to Republican states. Fiorina, on the other hand, argues the mainstream media is feeding the narrative that America is definitely polarized. Although the American public is not actually more polarized than they were in the 1980s and 1990s, they believe that they are because the media is constantly bombarding them with this narrative. The political class's rhetoric shows there is polarization, and the media continues to also show this, but there are not as many negative feelings in reality. Fiorina argues that what people are actually seeing is not polarization, but party sorting or partisan sorting, which has been going on for nearly 5 decades. To define the difference between polarization and party sorting, polarization shows a movement from independence to one or another political party, and a movement of all moderates to liberal or conservative camps. Party sorting, however, sees conservative members of a Democratic Party become Republicans, and liberal Republicans become Democrats, while moderates would stay independent. There are 3 main features of party sorting in the United States. First, the political class sorts first and the public sorts later. Second, sorting increases with the level of political involvement. And third, sorting has increased in the political class but remains below the levels of sorting in the public. The General Social Survey, GSS, has asked the public 6 questions about abortion since 1972. These 6 questions can be divided into 2 camps, one being the traumatic circumstances and the second being the elective circumstances. The public has agreed on the legalization of these circumstances since 1972, with little to no change in the data. When shown the data of the same questions asked by political parties, the data proves a division beginning in the 1990s and continuing to increase throughout the 21st century. This information proves the first proposition that the political class sorts first and then the public follows. While abortion is still a dominating point of view for both political parties, data shows that donors and workers of political parties are more polarized on this topic than strong partisans who are more polarized than weak partisans. This proves the third proposition that the moderate public are less sorted than the political class. Fiorina and Abramowitz shift their argument to the topic of the rising American electorate, or RAE. This theory states that pro-democratic demographics of ethnic minorities, unmarried women, college-educated professionals, and young people are increasing, while pro-Republican demographics of whites, married people, the less well-educated, and older people are decreasing. Fiorina argues this theory has been challenged by recent elections. It seems that after many hear from the mouths of Democrats about the decline and ousting of white middle-class citizens, many have turned out in droves at elections and offset this demographic imbalance. Fiorina argues that many who were enthusiastic about the RAE thesis led to the development of the Donald Trump coalition and his eventual election. According to Abramowitz, the RAE will eventually outnumber the white majority. Particularly Latinos will become the majority of the nation. In addition, marriage rates are decreasing, suggesting that the number of single working-class women will increase. These statistics seem to prove the possible outcome of a Democratic majority that would never be defeated. Fiorina argues against the RAA theory through a few arguments. First, this theory depends on two assumptions. One, the groups that are rising in numbers would maintain or strengthen their Democratic allegiance. The problem with this is that any group's allegiance to a political party can change within a few years or a decade. For example, Catholics voted heavily Democratic before 1968 and began to vote against the Democrats after 1968. Also, there is always a chance that a political party will eventually reorientate itself to align more with the public opinion of politics. The second assumption is that emphasizing the RAE theory would not push white voters away from the Democratic Party. On the contrary, this seems to be what happened in 2016. Also, many believe the rise in minority numbers is exaggerated by the U.S. Census Bureau. The Bureau tends to maximize the number of minority group members by considering anyone who does not have two Anglo-white parents as a minority. The problem is that interracial marriages are increasing, and children with mixed-race heritage either consider themselves white or do not consider their race as a disadvantage. Fiorina takes the conversation into a new direction as he focuses on the subject of the revolt of the masses. This subject is best described as the majority of working-class Americans are sick of how Washington, Wall Street, and the political elite are treating them and are going to choose anyone opposing the norm in politics. Fiorina points out that anti-elitism has always played an important role in the history of American politics, specifically in the late 19th century with public figures such as William Jennings Bryan rallying the people against the trusts in political elite. Today, it seems that the definition of elites has expanded to include the cultural elites, those who control education, entertainment, media, those with high education and income. The strong opposition to Donald Trump by mainstream media probably helped him win the votes of many in the middle class who felt that they could not trust any media elite. Most media stations are in highly wealthy areas, usually impenetrable to economic woes. People who enjoy their wealthy livelihoods tend to lose touch with the non-elites. It seems that the Democratic elites are no longer concerned with the petitions of the average man who might disagree with their liberal point of view. Fiorina argues that many forget what scholars already know. Race, religion, and sex do not often cause class identity or resentment, but education, income, and occupation are the common measures that many use to identify resentment and class identity. In conclusion, Abramowitz and Fiorina provide two opposing views to the increase in the divide in American politics. While Abramowitz offers a racially and socially charged argument, seemingly holding the people of the nation accountable. Fiorina provides an alternative of economic and political status that divides the nation's people. While both admit that Republican leadership seems to be lagging behind the majority opinion, Fiorina shows hope that this will eventually change and adapt, like most party adaptations before it. Thank you.